All right. So this is on a goat. This one is on a goat. This is less of a question and more of a directive or some advice, I would say. And I kind of like this. I'd like to talk about this. It says, "Don't quit your job even if you have savings." Right, and this is I'm guessing this is about people that are starting their own businesses. That have jobs currently, I'm guessing, right? I know this has been said a million times, but I want to share my personal story. Don't quit your job. This is in bold letters.
Oh, yeah.
Don't quit your job if you have a good alternative stream of income. It doesn't matter if you have savings. Here's my story. I'm going to briefly go through it. I saved up a year, saved up 1 year of runway, quit my job, and bought a one-way ticket to Thailand to build. It looks like they were building a SaaS business. It failed. And let's see, after 2 months, I started to feel the pressure financially, but I underestimated the psychological aspects of this. I decided to offer my skills as a service instead. Until they were doing freelancing. I worked as a product designer for 10 years. Monetizing a product is very hard. It changed everything. The money from freelancing gave me the headspace needed to pursue their own ideas. They stopped caring about whether the SaaS ideas would succeed or not. They didn't succeed with the SaaS product, and they might never succeed. But but that's beside the point. What they're telling you is, or what you're saying is, I knew all along. You can't see my action. You can see by my actions. I was naive enough to believe it didn't apply to me. As I'm typing this, I'm literally burned through my savings. But because of freelancing work, I made them back twofold. I don't want to imagine my state of mind had I not chosen the freelance route. So what they're basically saying is, if you're going to start out a new business and you have savings, that might not necessarily be enough. If you have a stream of income, now the key here that I didn't read is it can't interfere with your business plans, though, right? If you're going to do freelancing and you can do it on the side, off hours, or in between times when you're working on the primary business, cool, no problem with that. But you can't take away from the business, otherwise it's never going to succeed. That business, you need to have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week into that new startup that you're doing. And then if you can squeeze another 10 or so in freelancing, beautiful. But don't let the freelancing take away from the startup that you're trying to get to. That is where that's where your attention needs to be.
Yeah. And I think he's right when he says, once you have income, once you don't have to worry about the money from freelancing, you also aren't as stressed. And that's the thing I liked about it. You aren't as stressed about whether it takes 3 months or 6 months to launch your own idea.
Right.
Right. Like if time isn't important, because you and I both know that to build any business, time is a key factor. Right. And it's not just how much work you're doing. It's also how long before whatever you have catches on. How are you going to put money into marketing it or advertising it? So if you don't have a baseline income to cover you, it's going to make it hard to start any business.
Right.
And how you split your time, I think, should be determined on you personally and how quickly you want to launch your idea. If you have a time-sensitive product, right, like if you have a fad product or something that is hot right now, it's probably more important to launch it quickly. But like, let's say you wanted to build a new, CRM system, right?
Sure.
Because there's a million of them.
Yeah.
Does it really matter whether you launch it in 3 months or 9 months?
No.
As long as it launches and it's good. And you and I both know you're not going to get massive opt-in for new CRM systems in the first year of it being around, right? It's going to be...
It's going to take time.
Correct.
But that once it is ready to go, and I agree with your point that over a period of time, you can take a little longer to develop it. But once it's ready to go, it has to be your full attention.
Yeah.
Because if you're not paying full attention to it, no one else is going to either.
Correct. So you gotta, it's that balancing act, right? You need enough money to survive, but figure out what is the absolute bottom number that I need to survive. And that should be the amount of freelance work you take on.
Right.
If you're smart, you cut down every expense that you can.
Yeah.
That isn't a necessity,
right?
Like you need food, you need internet, right? But do you need steaks or do you need ramen noodles?
Steaks, of course.
Of course, right? And that's kind of the thing that a lot of people underestimate is when you are growing a business, when you're starting a business, a lot of times if you aren't in a position where you started and you get clients from day one, the first thing you have to do is cut all your expenses.
So interestingly enough, the person says that they went to Thailand,
which I think
is where you're going to cut a lot of expenses, right?
It's a smart move.
That's a beautiful move right there. So I personally never thought of that. That's a great idea. So if you're doing something in the software world or something where you can do it remotely, what a great Philippines, Thailand,
South America,
all those South America, right? Those are places where the cost of living is so far below what it is here in the United States.
And you also have access to cheap labor, cheap tech labor.
And good tech labor.
Correct.
Really good and cheap.
And I mean, they're all over the world now. I mean, we started hiring people out of South America. Their English level is pretty good. And they are fantastic at what they do.
Yeah.
It's really, most of the problems come in when there's a language barrier.
Right.
So if you can go to countries, right, as a starting a software business where the language isn't a barrier and you have access to their tech or to their like programmers, you can make fantastic headway in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, I love the move to Thailand, tried the SaaS game. Great. Nothing wrong with that. I'm almost glad you failed because you probably learned a lot from it the first time around, which just means that you just go back and rebuild it. You'll do it twice as fast and twice as good, right? And you had that additional source of income. That's a win-win. College will never prepare you for that.
No.
You can spend $250 grand on a degree and not get 1/10 of what you got out of trying this on your own. You probably spent, what, 50, 60 grand at the most, really? Seriously.
Yeah.
If you're just paying for yourself and you're in Thailand, that's all you need.
I was going to say, and think about the life experience.
Right.
Living in another country for however long, getting to experience that culture inside out. Like,
yeah, it's fantastic.
It gives you an edge with any business because it helps you understand how people work all over the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm completely on board with this idea. I love the advice. If you can have that stream of income, it's incredibly important. Because here's what happens to a lot of people. They have a savings. They say, okay, I'm going to save 6 months, 8 months, 12 months worth of my mortgage or my rent or whatever it's going to be, food, yada, yada, yada. And then I'm going to go out and start my business. And then there's unexpected expenses, et cetera, et cetera. That winds up getting cut by a third or maybe even in half. And then the burnout begins because you're getting closer to that 6-month mark where you're going to run out of money. The project's not done because it always takes twice as long as you think, and you get half the customers you think you're going to get, and that's just the reality. And then the burnout occurs, and then they're just like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. I got to go back to the workforce. Yeah. And then your dream is dead, and you're terrified to ever try that again.
People tend to forget that more businesses fail than succeed, right? And there's a reason for that.
What do you think that ratio is? It's high.
I know. In the restaurant world is the highest.
Oh yeah,
and I think it's 87% fail.
Yeah, fail. Oh God, yeah, definitely. And that's the restaurant world. But let's just try to equate that to the tech world, right? Because that's a lot of what we see here, are technology-based companies. Even that's high, right?
Yeah. Now I want to look this stuff up.
It's got to be 40-50%. It's got, if not more. It's got to be.
I think it's more than that.
I'm saying it's got to be at least that.
Let's see. How many businesses?
If only there were a way to find out.
Yeah, I know. Or at least get a general idea. 20% of businesses fail their first year.
Right. That sounds about right. That seems a little low. I would say by the third year.
5 years, 50%.
Within 5 years.
Yep. Survive. And then 30%, 10 years.
Survive. So 70% of businesses fail within 10 years.
Within 10 years.
Wow. See, I've always heard the magic number is 7 years. If you get past 7 years, you're generally okay. And oddly enough, in my business, right around that 7-year mark is when I started seeing things turn around.
Yeah. 25% make it past 15 and 5% make it past 30 years.
Wow.
But I mean, that's not unreasonable because if you think of all the businesses that are like what I call like lifestyle businesses, where it's a CPA that opened his own firm, right?
Right.
He does his 30 years and He sells it,
Yeah,
sells
he's
his
done.
client list, it's done, right?
Yeah, no one's buying that from.
Correct.
No one's buying the company and continuing that company. Someone's starting their own,
Yeah.
maybe buying the client list and moving on. Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that the number isn't higher the first year,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah, the first year seems low, only 20%.
Well, but
I
it's-
guess it makes sense because people are putting their own money into it.
Correct.
And they know they have to do it for at least a year or two.
Surviving doesn't mean profitable.
Correct. Right.
Right?
The business is in existence.
Yes.
Profitable, probably a different different ratio.
Also, because it's from the SBA, that includes sole proprietors and
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? So,
Right. So anyway, so who is this? This was On a Goat. Thank you. That's absolutely great advice. Please listen to that. If you can get an alternative stream of income while starting your business, man, it really helps you go a long way. It really does. But like we said earlier, once you get that business started and you're ready to start selling, make sure that alternative stream of income does not interfere with you getting your business going, because you have to devote as much time as you can to it. Because again, if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you.
Every hour you're freelancing is an hour where you can't promote it.
Correct. And if you weren't there for that hour on Friday, then you wouldn't have gotten that big deal.
That is correct.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, cool.
If you found this clip interesting, make sure to go listen to the full podcast. There's lots more content there.